Hi, today we're going to be talking about one of the emerging financial crimes that are afflicting people in America today, and that is identity theft. We'll also talk about ways in which companies sometimes will commit fraud against consumers. And so our goal today is to understand not only how is your identity stolen, but then also ways that you might be able to limit your exposure to identity theft, as well as being able to identify some of the common frauds that consumers face in the marketplace. So the first thing we're going to talk about is identity theft. Identity theft is a massive issue in the United States. These numbers are from 2014, but they point to the fact that basically every American is either already compromised or will have their identity compromised at some point in their lives. 17.6 million people were identity theft victims in 2014, or approximately 7% of the U.S. population. But, at the same time, in August of 2013, 3 billion Yahoo accounts, every single email account Yahoo had up until August 2013 had been compromised by hackers. And there are nearly 500,000 complaints to the Federal Trade Commission related to identity theft. And there's lots of ways in which people will use your identity to advantage themselves. They either open up credit card accounts or apply for your tax refund and take that money from you. They might go out and get a loan in your name where they might not have the proper credit score to get a loan, and then you're responsible for picking up the pieces. They might get a job under your name or might get medical care under your name that they don't deserve, and that ends up getting billed to you. And so there's lots of impacts to you when people steal your ID. You could lose out on loans. You might not be able to get good rates on loans that you might want to take out because the bank thinks that you're a bad person, that you don't pay your bills, when in fact those aren't bills that you need to pay. You can get harassed by debt collectors. People can sue you. It's extraordinarily stressful to have your ID stolen, and it can take a significant amount of your time to undo all of the damage that's caused by identity theft. And we're talking about 80 to 100 hours minimum for you to deal with the police, to deal with paperwork, to argue with banks, to deal with collectors, and all this stuff adds up, especially when you consider that you have to do all of these various tasks to clean up your identification or your identity when you're at work. And so when you're doing that, you're not actually working, which is a whole other cost to identity theft. So a huge, huge issue for people in America to deal with. There are a number of ways in which thieves will attempt to steal your identification. And these are just a few of the more common ones. One is called dumpster diving, and that is simply that they go through the trash that you leave at your office or you may leave outside your house, and they're looking for bills, they're looking for statements, they're looking for credit card offers that you might not have ripped in half. Anything they can get their hands on that has identifiable information of you, they're trying to get. Because once they have your account number, or they have your address, your phone number, or your social security number, then they can do a number of different things related to stealing your ID that can cause you trouble. Another one's called skimming. And skimming is where a device is used to steal the information from the magnetic strip on your credit card, your debit card, and that machine said to skim the information. When you insert your card and pull it out, then the computer software that the skimmer is using steals all that information and then enables the thief to use your credit card or debit card to purchase things that you didn't authorize. And skimming is very difficult to identify because the really good thieves use equipment that's very similar to legitimate card readers. So this is a picture of two different ATMs, and one has a skimmer on it and the other does not, and it's sometimes difficult for people to see. But you look at the ATM on the right, and you see that there's a little box here in the upper left-hand corner that did not appear on the left. That box is a camera, and that camera is pointed down at the keypad to try and steal your PIN. And then also you'll notice that there is an attachment to the card reader that was not on the original ATM, and this attachment is what's stealing your information from your magnetic strip. And so they have not only the information from your card, but now they have your PIN, and so the thief can pretty much use your bank account to buy whatever they want. So one of the things to look for with a skimmer is that you look for attachments like this, and one way to test whether it's legitimate or not is to literally just grab and jiggle it and see if it is firmly in place in the machine or not, because typically skimmers are not placed in so carefully that they feel like an actual part of the machine. They will wiggle, they will wobble, they will sometimes be able to be removed, and that would be an indication to you that you should probably use a different machine. But also look for things like the camera in the upper left-hand corner, where it's a different color than the rest of the ATM. Typically, companies like to have a brand, and they like to make sure that everything color coordinates. They're very thoughtful about that. So anytime you see a piece of equipment that doesn't match the color scheme of the ATM, it's not to say that it is a skimmer, but it should raise some red flags for you, and you should become very cautious and wary when things don't match. Here's another picture of a skimmer. You'll notice it's super easy for the skimmer piece to get pulled off from the card reader, and once you run your card through the skimming machine, they have everything that they need. So be wary with ATMs, with gas machines, and other places in which you are using debit and credit cards. Another common tactic that's used is called phishing. Phishing is where you get emails or phone calls that sound official, that look like they're from your bank, but that are intended to get your information so that they can steal from your bank account. So, for example, you might get a call that says they're from the credit card fraud monitoring service, and they will try and get you to feel like someone is using your card fraudulently. And many times what they'll then say is, can you please authorize or confirm that this account is yours? So give us your account number and your PIN, and we will be able to then say that you are in fact the account holder. Anytime a bank asks you for your account number, when they call you, they are not the bank. The bank never asks for your account number unless you initiate the conversation, because they have your account number. So that's an automatic red flag. They'll never ask for that, so never give it. But sometimes it's very tricky because their emails will look real. And so this might look like a real email from Bank of America because it's got the same color scheme and it's got links to the Bank of America website. But you have to be careful about whether or not, when you get an email from the bank, quote unquote the bank, whether or not you're actually going to the bank's website or not. One thing you'll want to check is whether or not the links are actually going to where you think they're going. So, for example, here's an email in which the actual correct URL appears in the email, but when you put your mouse over the email address, a different email or a different URL comes up. And so while it may look like you're clicking on the correct link, it's actually taking you to a site that will steal your information. Thieves will also try to change your address, as they'll call the bank pretending to be you and have your statements sent to a different address so that you can't see them. So if you can't see the statement, you don't know that people are stealing from you or using your credit cards to buy things that you're not aware of. And so you need to make sure that you are receiving credit card statements, bank statements on a monthly basis. If a month goes by and you didn't get a statement, you need to contact the bank immediately to get a copy of your statement to make sure that someone hasn't changed your address and is trying to keep theft from being detected. There's another strategy called pretexting, and pretexting is when people will call to pretend to be the bank just to confirm key information. This is similar to phishing, where they may either call up as the bank to try and get you to confirm information, or they'll call the bank pretending to be you to get the kind of information that they need to change your address or to open up an account. So be very careful with what information you share with people who are claiming to be a financial institution. And then there's also spyware or hacking. So when you go to some websites, they may have a software code put on your computer that will track your keystrokes, for example. And so they may know what your passwords are because you typed them in, and the software is sending them that information. And so you got to be careful to run antivirus software to make sure that your computer is as clean as possible. And also, don't save files with the title password on it, for example, because they're looking for files like that. They're looking for files with bank account numbers and things like that. So be very careful that you don't leave that kind of information in an obvious place on your computer. The final way that people will steal your ID is just the old-fashioned way. They'll steal your wallet. They'll steal your purse. They'll steal your checkbook. Once they have your card in hand, they will often go to a 7-Eleven or a gas station, try and buy something for $1 or $2, make sure it works, and then they're going to go off to the store and get what they can before you report it as stolen. So we get all caught up on these new ways of stealing your ID and forget that there are traditional forms of theft as well. So how do you protect yourself? A couple of things. One, never give out your personal information to anybody unless you initiate the conversation, I suppose, or as long as it's necessary for you to be able to gain access to what you need. So if you call the bank, providing them with information is one thing. Never give it to someone who's asking you for it when they initiate the call. Shred your documents, especially your bills and statements, so that people can't go through your trash and recreate them. Make sure that the websites you use are secure. Monitor your credit regularly. You get 3 credit reports a year for free through annualcreditreport.com, so please use those. Report theft immediately, because the sooner you report it, the less likely you are to be responsible for it. Try not to leave information on social media like your mom's maiden name, your favorite dog, where you went to school, all of the basic information that is typically used for a recovery password question. And use creative and effective passwords for each of your web accounts. The last thing we want to talk about briefly is just corporate fraud, what companies do to extract money from you in a way that is illegitimate. Fraud is basically deceiving somebody for personal gain to get you to believe one thing while giving you something else, and it happens through the mail, happens through the phone, happens through internet. And one of the most common is what we call false advertising. That is, the advertisement claims one thing and gives you something else. And so we oftentimes will see companies try and make their product look much more attractive than it really is. So the burger, the Big Mac from McDonald's looks great in the advertisement. In reality, it's just sort of slapped together. That's not technically false advertising because you are getting what they are promising, but it doesn't quite look like what you expect. So anytime a company promises one thing and delivers another, that is potentially fraud. Another strategy is called bait and switch. Basically what bait and switch is that a company might advertise a product at one price that's really low and then gets you into the door and makes you interested in purchasing it. But then they say, oh, that one's not available, and suddenly they switch you into a more expensive product that you had not intentionally come in to purchase. And so while it's not illegal to try and upsell somebody or get them to spend more money on a nicer product than maybe they wanted to when they walked in the door, it is illegal to pretend like an item exists in order to get someone to come into your store and then have it not really exist. And the whole purpose of advertising the product was just to get them to spend more on a different item. So if the advertisement that they're offering doesn't actually exist, that's a bait and switch. The lesson in all of this is that as a consumer, you have to be wary, you have to be cautious, you have to be aware of the fact that there are ways in which people are working to try and steal money from you. And so the more aware you are, the more safe you will be as a consumer.